Shalom. I am going to give knowledge about the 12 tribes. First, the 12 tribes of Israel. Israel is a family linked to Yaakov, Jacob, son of Yitzhak, Isaac. That means the tribes and linked through the father's DNA. So let's explore.
The fake tribe chart. This chart states Judah is Negro, black. Okay, this can be proven with Deuteronomy 28. But the rest don't make sense and I will prove it. So as we established, Yaakov is Negro. Meaning they had a Negro mother and a Negro father. This is Yisrael. Meet Leah. She had children for Yaakov. Reuben, the firstborn of Yaakov. Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Assar and Zebulun. Wait, if Yaakov was Negro, then guess what? All of their children would be Negro. This looks about right. Guatemala to Panama. That is not people but an area. If they have the same father and the same mother, they cannot be different nationalities. Rachel. Meet Rachel, Leah's sister. We know that is Leah was Negro, then Rachel was also Negro.
Where are the 12 tribes of Israel today, and who are they? Though many believe that the so-called Jews represent all 12 tribes of Israel, the fact is they don't represent any of the tribes. They are actually Jewish converts to a religion called Judaism. They are not the descendants of Jacob, the father of the Israelites. So if they are not, how can we identify who they are today? Here are some biblical clues that will help you to identify who the 12 tribes are.
Deuteronomy 28, verse 45 and 46. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of Yahuwah thy Elohim, to keep his commandments and his statutes, which he commanded thee. And they shall be upon thee for a sign, and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever.
The scriptures make it clear that the curses of Deuteronomy 28 would be a sign upon the Israelites. Many people, including our people, knew that something was wrong with us. We just couldn't pinpoint it. Caucasians were teaching that it was the curse of Canaan, Ham's son, that was on us. But we know, according to the scriptures, that prophecy was fulfilled when the Canaanites became hewers of wood and drawers of water for the Israelites. So when we read the curses of Deuteronomy 28, we know that this does not fit the so-called Jews that's dwelling in the land of Israel today. Also, the scripture states that once the true Israelites are back in their land, that they would not learn war anymore, and that the whole world would be at peace. Instead, we see wars all over the Middle East, all over the world even.
Micah 4, verse 2 and 3. Many nations shall come and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of Yahuwah, and to the house of the Elohim of Jacob. And he will teach us his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of Yahuwah from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among many people, and rebuke strong nations afar off. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up a sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Isaiah 14, verse 5 through 7. Yahuwah have broken the staff of the wicked, and the scepter of the rulers. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke. He that ruled the nations in anger is persecuted, and none hindereth. The whole earth is at rest, and is quiet. They break forth into singing.
The 12 tribes of Israel are all Negro. They fled into Africa because they were Negro. There are many that claim that the 12 tribes of Israel were a mixed race people. This claim is based on two factors. One, the handmaidens of Laban, Bilhah and Zilpah, were they Negroid or Caucasoid? The scripture doesn't mention the genealogy of Bilhah and Zilpah, but we know for certain that their offspring only married with Negroes. We know for a fact that they were not Caucasoid, but Negro. 2. Joseph married an Egyptian, which we know for certain that their offspring were Negro as well. Thus, there were no offspring mixed Caucasoid among the children of Israel. The so-called mixed multitude that left out of Egypt still would have been called Negro in appearance, because the children of Israel were not mixing with Caucasoid. Using Joseph and Moses as an example to claim that the marriage to foreigners was permitted, it is important to note that the law had not yet been established. We know that the law explicitly forbids the marrying of foreigners.
Throughout the Bible, we can see very clear indicators of what is prophesied to happen to the Israelites. Although they've had many captivities in the past, in the last days there is a specific prophecy that would affect only the tribe of Judah.
Isaiah 11, verse 12. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth.
In Isaiah, the 11th chapter and the 12th verse, it was said that the outcast of Israel would be assembled together, and the dispersed of Judah would be gathered from the four corners of the earth. Outcast meaning put out of the land of Israel, and dispersed meaning sent into slavery. While Israel was outcast from the land, Judah was the only tribe to go into this final captivity, but will be gathered from the four corners of the earth. From here, we can draw a direct correlation to the transatlantic slave trade and figure out where the tribe of Judah went.
Only one of the 12 tribes was actually shipped into captivity, and that was Judah. And the scripture makes that quite clear. Judah and Israel were separated. And it was Judah that committed abomination against the Most High.
Ezekiel 37, verse 21 and 22. And say unto them, Thus saith Yahuwah, Elohim, Behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whether they be gone, and will gather them on every side, and bring them into their own land, and I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king over them all, and they shall be no more two nations, neither shall they be divided into two kingdoms any more at all.
And under the leadership of wicked kings, Judah had forsaken the one true Elohim. And the people worshiped idols and practiced the same wickedness as the other nations that surrounded them.
Ezekiel 8, verse 15 through 18. Then said he unto me, Hast thou seen this, O son of man? Turn ye yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations than these. And he brought me into the inner court of Yahuwah's house, and behold, at the door of the temple of Yahuwah, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men, with their backs toward the temple of Yahuwah, and their faces toward the east, and they worshiped the sun toward the east. Then he said unto me, Hast thou seen this, O son of man? Is it a light thing to the house of Judah that they commit the abominations which they commit here? For they have filled the land with violence, and have returned to provoke me to anger. And lo, they put the branch to their nose. Therefore will I also deal in fury. Mine eyes shall not spare, neither will I have pity. And though they cry in my ears with a loud voice, yet will I not hear them.
The Most High sent Judah into captivity because of the abominations he committed in worshiping the sun, and scattered them throughout the four corners of the earth. And the scripture makes that quite clear.
Job 3, verse 6. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians, that ye might remove them far from their border. Zechariah 1, verse 21. Then said I, What come these to do? And he spake, saying, These are the horns which have scattered Judah, so that no man did lift up his head. But these are come to fray them, to cast out the horns of the Gentiles, which lifted up their horn over the land of Judah to scatter it.
Now, throughout the Bible, we can see very clear indicators of what is prophesied to happen to the 12 tribes of Israel. Although they've had many captivities in the past, in the last days there was a specific prophecy that would affect only the tribe of Judah. Outcast meaning put out of the land of Israel, and dispersed meaning sent into slavery. Now, Israel was outcast from the land, but Judah was the only one that was sent into this final captivity, but will be gathered from the four corners of the earth.
The tribe of Judah are the black Negroes that were shipped in the transatlantic slave trade to North, South, and Central America, Haiti, Cuba, Mexico, Jamaica, Portugal, Spain, West Indies, England, and other places around the world. Even though the indigenous people of some of these areas were black, they were conquered by Europeans, and because of the mixing of the seed between European males and black women, what we see today is essentially the creation of a third race.
The sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. If they have the same father and the same mother, they cannot be different nationalities. They said Benjamin was the West Indies.
Jews. First, the Jews of this time are called Ashkenazi. They can be traced back to the DNA line to Gomer, the grandson of Noah. Gomer, Standard Hebrew Gomer, Tiberian Hebrew Gmer, pronounced Greek, Romanized, Gamer, was the eldest son of Japheth, and of the Japhetic line, and father of Ashkenaz, Riphoth, and Togarmah, according to the Table of Nations in the Hebrew Bible, Genesis 10. The reason this is an issue is because the land that was given to Japheth was Jubilee subdivision, and Japheth also divided the land of his inheritance amongst his sons. 8. And the first portion came forth for Gomer to the east from the north side to the river Tina, and in the north there came forth for Magog all the inner portions of the north until it reacheth to the sea of Meat. 9. And for Madai came forth as his portion that he should possess from the west of his two brothers to the islands, note, including Britain and Ireland. And to the coasts of the island.
Note, so says a new study in the journal Nature Communications. An international team of scientists sequenced the complete genomes of 128 healthy Ashkenazi Jews and compared each of those sequences with the others, as well as with the DNA of 26 Flemish people from Belgium. Their analysis allowed them to trace the genetic roots of this population to a founding group in the Middle Ages. Ashkenaz in Hebrew refers to Germany, and Ashkenazi Jews are those who originated in Eastern Europe. Sephardic Jews, by contrast, are from the areas around the Mediterranean Sea, including Portugal, Spain, the Middle East and Northern Africa. About 80% of modern Jews have Ashkenazi ancestry, according to the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Albert Einstein was an Ashkenazi Jew, as were Gertrude Stein and Carl Sagan. Steven Spielberg and Scarlett Johansson are also Ashkenazi Jews, along with 3 current members of the U.S. Supreme Court, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Stephen Breyer and Elena Kagan. Note, the bloodline of Japheth. The Gentiles. Genesis 10:5. 2. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshech, and Tiras. 3. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz and Riphoth and Togarmah. 4. And the sons of Javan, Elishah and Tarshish, Kittim and Dodanim. 5. By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided into their lands, every one after his own tongue, according to their families, into their nations.
From Wikipedia. Ashkenazic Jews or Ashkenazim are a Jewish diaspora population who coalesced in the Holy Roman Empire around the end of the first millennium CE. Their traditional diaspora language is Yiddish, a West Germanic language with Jewish linguistic elements, including the Hebrew alphabet, which developed during the Middle Ages after they had moved from Germany and France into Northern Europe and Eastern Europe. For centuries, Ashkenazim in Europe used Hebrew only as a sacred language until the revival of Hebrew as a common language in 20th century Israel. Throughout their numerous centuries living in Europe, Ashkenazim have made many important contributions to its philosophy, scholarship, literature, art, music, and science. The rabbinical term Ashkenazi refers to diaspora Jews who established communities along the Rhine in western Germany and northern France during the Middle Ages. Upon their arrival, they adapted traditions carried over from the Holy Land, Babylonia, and the Western Mediterranean to their new European environment. The Ashkenazi religious rite developed in cities such as Mainz, Worms, and Troyes. The eminent Rishon from medieval France, Shlomo Itzhaki, has had a significant influence on the interpretations of Judaism by Ashkenazim. In the late Middle Ages, due to widespread persecution, the majority of the Ashkenazi population steadily shifted eastward, moving out of the Holy Roman Empire into the areas that later became part of the Polish, Lithuanian Commonwealth. These areas today comprise parts of present-day Belarus, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, Poland, Russia, Slovakia, and Ukraine. The name Ashkenazi derives from the biblical figure of Ashkenaz, the first son of Gomer, son of Japheth, son of Noah, and a Japhetic patriarch in the Table of Nations, Genesis 10. The name of Gomer has often been linked to the ethnonym Cimmerians. Biblical Ashkenaz is usually derived from Assyrian Askyoza, cuneiform Askyoze/Iskyoze, a people who expelled the Cimmerians from the Armenian area of the upper Euphrates. The name Askyoza is usually associated with the name of the Scythians. The intrusive N in the biblical name is likely due to a scribal error confusing a vav with a nun. In Jeremiah 51:27, Ashkenaz figures as one of 3 kingdoms in the far north, the others being Mini and Ararat, perhaps corresponding to Eridu, called on by God to resist Babylon. In the Yuma tractate of the Babylonian Talmud the name Gomer is rendered as Germania, which elsewhere in rabbinical literature was identified with Germanicia in northwestern Syria, but later became associated with Germania. Ashkenaz is linked to Skanza/Skanzia, viewed as the cradle of Germanic tribes, as early as a 6th century gloss to the Historia Ecclesiastica of Eusebius. From Wikipedia. In the 10th century history of Armenia of Yofannes Draskanakertkai, 1.15, Ashkenaz was associated with Armenia, as it was occasionally in Jewish usage, where its denotation extended at times to Adiabene, Hazaria, Crimea and areas to the east. His contemporary Saadia Jayan identified Ashkenaz with the Sokolaba or Slavic territories, and such usage covered also the lands of tribes neighboring the Slavs and Eastern and Central Europe. In modern times, Samuel Krauss identified the biblical Ashkenaz with Hazaria. Sometime in the early medieval period, the Jews of Central and Eastern Europe, conforming to the custom of designating areas of Jewish settlement with biblical names, Spain was denominated Sepharad, Obadiah 20, France was called Tsarfat, 1 Kings 17:9, and Bohemia was called the land of Canaan. By the High Medieval period, Talmudic commentators like Rashi began to use Ashkenaz/Eretz Ashkenaz to designate Germany, earlier known as Lothar, where, especially in the Rhineland communities of Speyer, Worms, and Mainz, the most important Jewish communities arose. Rashi uses Leshon Ashkenaz, Ashkenazi language, to describe Yiddish, and Byzantium and Syrian Jewish letters referred to the Crusaders as Ashkenazim. Given the close links between the Jewish communities of France and Germany following the Carolingian unification, the term Ashkenazi came to refer to the Jews of both medieval Germany and France.
He didn't know Hebrew. We were like, you don't even know Hebrew? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I think we know more Hebrew than you do. And then he gonna say, he said, I said, you know what, sir? I said, you are as wide as could be, but you want to tell me that the original Israelites, that they're indigenous to the land of that area. I said, but however, I said, this is a known fact that people that are born in Israel have a higher risk for developing skin cancer than those that came to Israel in 1948. Why? Because those people they're not the indigenous people of the land, because they are getting skin cancer. And I told him, he's like, where is that at? I said, it's in Haaretz, the magazine, the Israeli magazine. I said, look, there was a point in time when Israel was like the second or third, they had the second or third highest skin cancer rates in the world. He didn't believe us, and then so Zion was like, I'm gonna send it to you. And he sent it to you. He's like, oh, I didn't know that. And then I think Zion sent him some more stuff. He's like, where is that at? You gotta prove it to me. And we sent him everything. He's like, we're not making this stuff up. And we had the stuff to back it up.
Then he said, I guess this is something I overlooked, but what are you saying though? Well, what we're saying is your skin complexion don't match the land, bro. That's what we're saying. We saying the land is against you being there. This is deeper than me telling you you don't belong there. The land is telling you you don't belong there.
Much has been uncovered, and it is clear that the Israelite tribes have been misrepresented by the so-called 12 tribes chart in an attempt to wipe them out. Our heritage is literally being given to another people and passed around like a free lunch. As stated in the book of Baruch, we should not give that which is profitable unto us to other nations. Now you have us claiming that people that have a Mongoloid or Spanish mixture are Israelites when they are not. All 12 tribes were and still are Negroes. Now, as for those that may have some European in their blood as a result of being raped by our former slave masters, we must remember that when you breed back into black or Israelite blood for more than 3 consecutive generations, you stamp out that other seed line. This was shown in the example in Whited Out Part 1, and is also confirmed in Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 8. When the original seed line is interrupted by this raping or the mixing of our blood, the Most High says in Joel 3:21 that he's going to cleanse our blood. You know, he had foreknowledge of what was going to happen to us, which is why he already had a plan in place. Knowing all of this, we can't continue to transgress the Most High's laws by using a false chart to create false lineages based on false, superficial markers of who the Israelites are. The Bible already tells us how to identify them in the last days. And for us to try to reason within ourselves that because Hawaiians may say aloha, that they're from the tribe of Naphtali, that's pure nonsense. Or that the Venezuelans are Asher because of the oil that's in their land. That's just pure conjecture. There's oil all over the planet, so that's a moot point for determining who the tribe of Asher is. There are areas in Africa that have oil and the land is rich. As a matter of fact, Africa probably has the richest soil and the greatest resources on the planet. This is why the land has been raped and plundered and pillaged and robbed for centuries by the same people who rape the populations of indigenous people worldwide. All of this raping going on, it kind of coincides with Matthew the 13th chapter, which talks about how the wicked one was going to go about sowing his seed in the earth and bringing forth children among the wheat. They call those tares. See, now, all of this gets kind of deep when you start putting things into perspective. So trying to pretend like some Israelites are black and then now they're all of a sudden almost white because of mixing, but disregarding the fact that the Most High told us not to mix with these other nations to begin with, that's ludicrous if you claim to be all about the truth. The fact of the matter is, there was a plan conjured up by whomever to justify marrying women of other nations and diminishing the so-called Israelite seed.
The bottom line is, those that establish the 12 tribes chart have an agenda. They are joining themselves with strange women and establishing their own righteousness. 1 Ezra chapter 9 verse 8 states, "Ye have transgressed the law in marrying strange wives, thereby ye have increased the sins of Israel." The establishment of the 12 tribes chart has shook the very foundation of our awakening and sent many into a tailspin. We've already had to endure having our entire culture taken by those that claim to be Jews and are not. But now we want to just give our heritage to another? The world is awakening to who the true Israelites are. Isaiah the 14th chapter got folks reconsidering this 1948 so-called regathering of the Jews in Israel, because it has been the total opposite of what the Bible said would happen. Instead of the world being at peace and breaking forth with singing, it has been utter chaos and war with those so-called Jews. The establishment of who we are as Israelites does not mean that other nations cannot be grafted into the Messiah. But we can't just go around penciling in tribes to satisfy our lust for strange women. This is a direct rebellion against the word and the will of the Father. The Bible clearly shows where the true Israelites are and where the Messiah is going to gather his people. Judah, he's going to gather from the four corners of the earth. But the other tribes, he will gather from beyond the rivers of Cush in Africa. Isaiah chapter 11 verse 10 through 14 has got to be the most ignored passage in the scriptures. I know all these Bible scholars and teachers and preachers have seen this passage and yet they choose to ignore it. I wonder why. The last thing that Gentiles want you to know is that the 12 tribes of Israel are Negro and that the remaining lost tribes are in Africa. The wicked have been trying for years to wipe out the seed of Israel and the entire planet. They want our Hebrew brothers to take Gentiles as wives to whiten out our offspring. So now we have a wicked chart that tells us that Gentiles are Hebrews. If we don't stand against this, we're going to be whited out.
Isaiah 14. 1. He will resettle them in their own country. Foreigners will join them and unite with the descendants of Jacob. 2. People will take them and bring them to their own place. The nation of Israel will possess nations as male and female slaves in Yahweh's land. They will take their captors captive and rule their oppressors. 3. When that day comes, Yahweh will give you relief from your pain and suffering, from the hard slavery you were forced to do. 4. Then you will mock the king of Babylon with this saying, how the tyrant has come to an end. How his attacks have come to an end. 5. Yahweh has broken the staff of the wicked, the scepter of rulers. 6. They struck the people with fury, with blows that didn't stop. They ruled nations in anger, persecuting them without restraint. 7. The whole earth rests and is peaceful. It breaks out into shouts of joy. 8. Even the cypresses rejoice over you. The cedars of Lebanon say, since you have fallen, no lumberjack has come to attack us. 9. Sheol below wakes up to meet you when you come. It wakes up the ghosts of the dead, all who were leaders on earth. It raises all who were kings of the nations from their thrones. 10. All of them will greet you, you also have become weak like us. You have become like one of us. 11. Your pride has been brought down to Sheol along with the music of your harps. Maggots are spread out like a bed under you, and worms cover you. 12. How you have fallen from heaven, you morning star, son of the dawn. How you have been cut down to the ground, you conqueror of nations. 13. You thought, I'll go up to heaven and set up my throne above El's stars. I'll sit on the mountain far away in the north where the gods assemble. 14. I'll go above the top of the clouds. I'll be like a leon. 15. But you've been brought down to Sheol, to the deepest part of the pit. 16. Those who see you stare at you, they look at you closely and say, is this the man who made the earth tremble, who shook the kingdoms? 17. Who made the world like a desert and tore down its cities, who didn't let his prisoners go home? 18. All the kings of the nations, all of them, have been buried with honor, each in his own tomb. 19. But you are thrown out of your tomb like a rejected branch. You are covered with those who were killed in battle. You go down to the stones of the pit like a trampled corpse. 20. You won't be joined by the kings in the tomb, because you have destroyed your land and killed your people. The descendants of the wicked will never be mentioned again. 21. Prepare a place to slaughter their sons because of their ancestors' guilt. They won't be able to rise, possess the earth, and rebuild cities all over it. 22. I'll rise up against them, declares Yahweh Sabaoth. I'll cut off the name of the survivors from Babylon, its offspring and descendants, declares Yahweh. 23. It will become the possession of herons, it will become pools of water, I'll sweep it with the broom of destruction, declares Yahweh Sabaoth. Israel, Israel, is not a land but a people. And the chosen people at that.